Hello and welcome. You're watching Upfront. I'm Karan, Thapar. One of the heroes of this election is Shashi Tharoor, and he's my guest today. He's won his Thiruvananthapuram constituency for the third time consecutively, and this time with a majority of almost 1 lakh. And as a result, many people believe he should be the Congress party's leader in the Lok Sabha. Today, I'm going to ask him both about the Congress party's defeat, how he explains it to himself, as well as Mr. Modi's spectacular victory. How is he going to respond to the many issues of concern that raises? But Shashi, let's start with Thiruvananthapuram. You won that constituency for the third time consecutively with a majority just under 1 lakh, and you've gone up by 85,000 votes compared to 2014. And yet many people thought you were going to lose.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, they were publicizing the BJP's expectations of victory. One of the exit polls actually gave the seat to the BJP. Another exit poll said too close to call. It really looked pretty bad until counting day morning. And then, of course, from the time the first percent of tallies were released, I never lost the lead. It just kept growing slowly and then accelerated towards the end. So it was very gratifying. And I must say the trust that the voters of Thiruvananthapuram have placed in me was all the more satisfying because the BJP's expectations were so much on the other side.
And something very similar happened in Kerala as a whole. Your party, Congress, has won 15 seats. With your UDF allies, you won 4 more. In fact, this is the UDF's best performance in over 50 years. And it happened at a time when the BJP's vote share had gone up by almost 5%. So did you benefit from an almost complete collapse of the left?
Yeah, in all the constituencies other than Thiruvananthapuram, it was the left that collapsed. Thiruvananthapuram was the BJP's strongest constituency and the only one in which they had a realistic chance. In the other 19, they were simply not in the fray. And even in many constituencies where they came third, they got far more votes than they'd ever got before. So they really weren't contenders. It was between the Congress and the left in all these places, and the left's vote collapsed. I certainly credit the mishandling of the Supreme Court verdict on Sabrimala for it, because it antagonized a lot of people. The BJP thought they would exploit that, but they misbehaved so much in the cynical exploitation of the issue, while not using the power they enjoyed in Delhi to help ease the pain of the believers, that in the end the believers said, what's the point of voting for these guys? They had power, they didn't solve our problem. Why would they do it now? And they voted for the union.
But you're also suggesting that the fact that Rahul Gandhi allowed the Kerala unit of the party to take its own stand on Sabrimala actually helped you enormously.
Yes, and I must say the Congress president himself modified his stand. I know his instinctive reactions were my instinctive reactions as well, which is to take the liberal stand that anything that enhances women's rights has got to be a good thing. So he welcomed the verdict. But when he realized that we were perhaps all making a mistake in framing the issue as one of women's equality, that it was really much more an issue of sanctity, of a practice that traditionally people had held very dear. And so they really felt that they'd been violated in a sense at a personal level. And ironically, some of the most agitated people were the putative beneficiaries of this decision, the women of that age, between 10 and 50, who came out in large numbers saying, we don't want this decision, we're equal. What we want is to have our traditions respected.
Quite right.
And then Rahul ji did, in fact, modify his position and said it's not just the Kerala party that's taking the line against the Supreme Court verdict. I too understand why it
in
is.
Kerala, you found a way of appealing to the people and being in sync with them. But unfortunately, nationwide, Congress has done very differently. When I spoke to you earlier this month, you predicted roughly somewhere between 120 and 140 seats for Congress. You ended up with 52. And in 18 states and union territories, you haven't got a single seat at all. Would you accept this is a debacle?
It is, and what is shocking is, frankly, that no one expected it. Let's be very realistic. What I was saying to you at that time was not that much out of line with what most political pundits across the country were saying. Until the exit polls came out, the prospect of another BJP landslide seemed absurdly remote. And in fact, it was only all the various pundits, and I read quite extensively as well after my own voting was cast. I was following the media avidly, and all the pundits were out there. It was merely a difference of degree. Is the BJP going to get 180? Is it going to get 150? Is it going to get 190? There was never any expectation they were going to come close to a majority by themselves.
And they ended up with 303.
They got 21 more than they got in 2014. See, 2014 had seemed to most people to be a freak result, impossible to replicate. And not only did they replicate it, they improved upon it.
So
That's a very sobering thing.
I'm glad to hear that you agree that it's a debacle, because A.K. Antony, a fellow carer person like you, has actually gone public at the CWC headquarters to say it's not a disaster. I mean, how on earth can any congressman, unless he's burying his head in the sand, say this is not a disaster?
Karan, I wasn't at the meeting and I don't want to take issue with any of my colleagues and their interpretations. We're all entitled to react.
But you stand by the fact this is a debacle.
It is a debacle, and at the same time it raises some very searching questions we need to ask ourselves about how did we misread the national mood so much? Did we go wrong in sort of reading the tea leaves here? And where did the BJP get it right that we failed to appreciate? These are questions we need to ask in our own interest. Because I keep reminding people that it's not just the next election 5 years away. We have a whole series of state elections coming up, 2 or 3 this year, another 2 or 3 next year. We need to up our game and we need to start doing it now. So the urgency of understanding what went wrong is also because that's the first step towards reviving us, as we need to revive ourselves for what should go right.
Let me put it like this: 4 days have passed. By now, as a thoughtful person, you will have begun to think about some of the things that went wrong. Share them with me. What are your initial feelings about things that went wrong?
Well, the irony is I'm not even sure we were wrong to be wrong. Let me explain what I mean by that. I don't think it was unreasonable of us to assume that most voters would vote in their economic self-interest. You've got a 45-year high in unemployment. You've got farmers in such distress that many are committing suicide in record numbers. You've got SMEs and micro enterprises that have been forced to shut down because of demonetization. You've got economic growth down 2%. The sort of so-called twin balance sheet problem in the businesses and the banks that are holding them back from investment. Every sector of society was living with the consequences of the economic ineptitude of this government.
And when people came to vote, Shashi, none of that mattered.
None of that mattered.
And why? That's what I'm asking you. Why?
My point in saying we were not wrong to be wrong is that our position was a reasonable one. That all of these issues, surely there was going to be a massive backlash against the Modi government, and there wasn't. So that means not that our analysis was wrong in theory, but it turned out to be wrong in this particular situation because the BJP found another narrative. Now, what was it? One is this whole, many pundits are claiming it's all about Mr. Modi's personal leadership, and there's no doubt that his larger-than-life image, which has been built up assiduously over the last 5 years, has undoubtedly made a profound impact on many voters across northern India.
Let me interrupt you there. Let me stop you there.
Okay, do you therefore give me time for a second point?
Absolutely. But do you therefore accept that this is not just a victory of the BJP, it is an endorsement of Mr. Modi, that people have voted for him with trust and faith, they're deliberately and consciously giving him a second term. Do you accept that?
I have no doubt that it's a Modi victory and not a BJP victory. I mean, frankly, we've heard too many stories of BJP candidates saying, vote for me if you want Mr. Modi. There's been, in many cases, a kind of faceless thing. Don't forget, they only renominated about 100 of their old MPs. Everybody else is new. And these guys basically didn't come and say, I'm a stalwart. They came and said, vote for Mr. Modi.
But the corollary to what you're saying is that at a time when Mr. Modi was a presidential figure, looming over this election, with people completely in awe of him, you had no equivalent to put up against him.
No, but you see, the fact is, no one could have had an equivalent. Karan.
But you didn't.
No, but let me explain why not. First of all, ours is not a presidential system, it's a parliamentary one. Second, we were in many cases facing the BJP directly, but in more cases, we were actually in either three-cornered contests or cooperating with regional parties who were stronger than us in some
With
places.
the exception of Karan and Punjab, you lost them all.
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm trying to explain to you that we didn't want to bat on their strong wicket. If they felt that they would gain by pitching this larger-than-life figure, who obviously, having been Prime Minister for 5 years, had been pitched that way, why should we actually...
Surely there's an error in your thinking, because when you say this became presidential and you didn't want it to be presidential, you're ignoring the fact that actually parliamentary elections all over the world are becoming presidential. In Britain, in Canada, in Australia, the other major democracies, people vote for the prime ministerial candidate of either the ruling party or the opposition. It is a pitched battle between the two personalities, and it's inevitable it would be that in India. You tried to insist it shouldn't be, but you knew in your heart it was going to be, and you weren't prepared for it. You didn't have a personality that would match up to Mr. Modi.
Actually, I think it was good of us not to make it an issue of personalities. First of all, it was a very unequal playing field because not only was the Prime Minister somebody who had already, before the 2014 elections and certainly in the 5 years since, built up his own image to this larger-than-life stage, but they mean the assiduous cultivation of the personality cult through every means available, from Facebook and WhatsApp groups and all that, to, let's face it, 5,600 crores of taxpayers'
prime
money
ministerial
in government
candidates all
advertising.
over the world try and make it a personality cult around either a Mrs. May or a Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and they succeed, and therefore they win.
They succeed when the incumbent has a strong anti-incumbency.
No,
Mr. Modi
surely
had
the
didn't have
problem
it.
was that in fact your party's head didn't have a personality around which you could build a cult. Try hard as you may have wanted to, he didn't have the sort of personality that appealed to people. That was your drawback
That's not
vis-a-vis
fair.
Modi.
That's not fair. I would say that Rahul Gandhi's personality not only did appeal to many in many aspects, but that he was growing in stature and acceptability in the
He
course
lost
of the
his
last
own
year and a half.
constituency. If he had a great personality after
also-
15 years, he'd have retained it.
He also won a record majority in another constituency. So please, let's not just look at
Let's come
Amethi.
away from Rahul Gandhi.
But
Let's
no,
concentrate.
let me say that I think you're slightly guilty of trivializing the larger issue by reducing it to one of individuals. I grant you, Mr. Modi had a huge advantage as the popular, larger-than-life personality, but I do believe there were some serious issues. We talked about the
I'll come
economic.
to Mr. Modi's issues. Let's for a moment focus on the main themes and the main concerns people had about Congress's electoral campaign. And then I'll come to Mr. Modi. To begin with, would you accept that the enormous stress on Rafale and Chaukidar Chor hai simply didn't resonate with the Indian people?
Again, you see, that was not my experience. I mentioned Rafale in my campaign speeches in Thiruvananthapuram, and people were very attentive and interested. Mind you, I couldn't use the Hindi phrase because it wouldn't make any sense in Malayalam. Chor in Malayalam is rice, not thief. But as far as the substance of it is, Rahul Gandhi was raising serious questions to which there hadn't been satisfactory answers. And the BJP's
Forgive me,
response was
the-
the Supreme
the
Court has
poll-
cleared it.
no,
The Supreme Court had cleared it on the basis of a
Shashi,
discredited
you're ignoring
affidavit.
the fact that all the post-election poll results have shown that over 60% of India was not aware that Rafale was a problem.
talking
And
about-
most people have said that it didn't matter to them when they went to vote. So the effort and energy he put into it didn't yield the result he wanted. And that's why I say to you, it was a wasted energy.
No, let me stress that indeed the post-poll analysis confirms that it wasn't as big an issue in people's minds as we had thought it would be. But it was never for us a single issue. It was part of a larger pattern of governmental ineptitude, which was headlined by economics. I mean, this Achhe Din never came for people, right? So our question is,
Shashi,
why would a
let's-
young man,
let's
why
stick to
would a
Rafale.
young
I'll
man
come-
who voted for Mr. Modi?
let's stick to Rafale. I'll come to the other issues one by one. Congressmen are now revealing in interviews to newspapers where they don't want their name taken that actually it was a mistake to stress Rafale. A former Congress chief minister has told the Indian Express that the Indian people did not warm to Rahul Gandhi's personal attacks on the Prime Minister. They saw them as discourteous and un-Indian. They didn't win over people, they put the Indian people off. That's another reason why Rafale backfired.
Look, Karan, I'm prepared to believe that many of the people you've spoken to, apparently off the record and not on
No,
your
I'm
camera,
quoting the Indian Express.
may have said that. Let's have them say it directly, as it were, to the Indian people on camera.
Apparently,
Listen,
this was an issue that came up at the CWC meeting on Saturday. And in fact, Rahul seems to be upset that leaders who allegedly he named didn't spend more time on Rafale. According to one of the reports, he even asked for a show of hands how many people brought up Rafale, and very few hands went up. That itself reveals that your own party on Rafale believed that Rahul Gandhi was pushing something that wasn't of importance and wasn't striking a chord, yet he persisted.
well, I think the party certainly stood by him when he raised it in Parliament. And, as far as Rafale is concerned, the nation still ought to know what happened, and Rahulji was right to raise the questions. But I wasn't in the CWC meeting. I cannot speak for the rest of the party there. I'm not a member of the CWC. All I can say is, as one candidate, I found it a legitimate issue to raise, along with all the other issues I've mentioned to you.
Perfectly.
Having said
you
that,
have a right to say it that way, but the point is it didn't resonate with the Indian people. Let's come to a second.
so we know that with hindsight. But at that time, it was fair
actually,
game.
even at that time, you knew it wasn't working because the voices outside Congress were saying to you in television studios and newspaper articles, this isn't working, drop it, move away from it. But Rahul didn't. But let's move on beyond Rafale. A second concern about the Congress campaign is the way you responded to Balakot and the mood of nationalism that it infused
So that was my
in the
second
country.
point here.
And there most people felt that either Congress was criticizing or disbelieving the military success, or worse still, you were out of sync with the mood of the country. Either way, you were on a losing wicket.
Except that I think morally we were on the right stand. First of all, we have always stood with the government when it comes to genuine threats to national security. But one of the things that's most astonishing is we have a major failure of national intelligence resulting in the Pulwama killing 40 people, 40 of our Jawans killed because our government made a number of blunders, whether it came to not understanding the nature of the threat when it was coming, not heeding warnings, taking them seriously, not barring the highway to access, whatever it was. We lost 40 lives. Yet that failure was not pinned on the government and on Mr. Modi. Secondly,
But Shashi,
let me finish.
should
Karan.
you have raised that in the middle of an election campaign when the mood of the country did not want to focus
So
on
we
it?
didn't raise it. We
But
had the
actually you
decency-
did.
No,
You
we had
did.
the-
Rahul spoke about this, the precise point you're making.
No, I think we didn't make a big, he certainly didn't make as big an issue of it as he did in Rafah. Listen to me. Second concern is that Balakot, it was the government that kept shifting the goalposts on what they'd actually achieved. You will all remember in the first 24 hours, there were all these stories about 300 terrorists being killed. Eliminated was the word I think used by the Foreign Secretary. And we were a bit mystified because you don't kill 300 people without lots of coffins showing up at the place. And suddenly the story kept changing. And then even before the elections were over, the foreign minister says, we never intended to kill anybody.
Shashi,
Our intention was to send a signal.
Not for a
If they'd
moment
said-
do I deny that you are correct in pointing out that the government kept changing its story. I'm making a different point. I'm saying that the country was willing to believe the government, whatever story it put out. And in questioning the government, you looked to the country as if you were questioning patriotism, questioning the army, and out of sync with the mood of the country. Let me finish this point by putting this to you. Many people believe if you had responded the way Captain Amarinder Singh, a former officer and a chief minister who's wooed the veterans and war widows effectively, if you'd responded the way he had, you would have had a very different result. And the funny thing is, Amarinder Singh is now publicly saying he wasn't even consulted by Congress.
No. What Amarinder Singh said, by the way, many of us said in this first 48 hours after what happened, everybody in the Congress party, starting with Rahul Gandhi, and said, including Amarinder Singh, stood by the government. There was no question about that. We are Indians first. The BJP or the Congress party don't fight wars. India fights a war. When India is attacked, we are Indians and not at all defined by our parties. So let me stress,
But that's not the impression the country got from the way you
it was
responded.
later when the goalposts were being
But
shifted.
it
that
hardly
they made another
matters when
comment.
it happened, because it happened during the height of the campaign. It doesn't matter whether it happened 3 days later or 4 days later. The point is, by the time you'd finished delivering your impression of Balakot and questioning the mood in the country, the nation was convinced that you were questioning the army, that you weren't nationalistic, and they began to doubt your capacity to protect India. That cost you.
Now, I recognize again with hindsight that it cost us, but let me put you 2 or 3 things. First, as far as the questioning was concerned, it was always done within a very strong conviction that we have to defend India against terrorism. At no point was any dilution of that. We simply said, what exactly has the government done? Can they please come
But
clean
this
with
was
the
the
nation?
wrong time to
Second-
raise that question.
Second, as far as Pulwama, Balakot, the entire mix, it was so transparently an attempt to divert attention from economic failure and the fact that Achay Din had never come for anybody into something that would turn the election into a khaki election. That transparent effort we denounced. And we denounced it not disloyally to the country or the armed forces, but saying, why is the ruling party not showing accountability
Let's
for this?
even take up the second
And then
point you're
finally, the
making,
third
that you
point.
tried very hard to bring the discourse back to economic factors and away from nationalism and Balakot. And the core of that was Nyay. Your whole hopes in this election, many say, hinged on Nyay, and yet when it comes to Nyay, you failed to communicate what could have been a good idea to the country. All the exit poll results and all the post-poll analysis suggests that a very small number of people were aware of Nyay. Those who were aware didn't understand it, and those who understood it didn't believe you could deliver. So even there, your attempt to move back to economic issues didn't succeed.
Now, there on the specific question of Nyay, my own view is that our timing was too late. We should have released it 6 months earlier and taken the campaign out to the villages. I do believe that awareness of Nyay, whatever limited awareness there was confined to the elites, the educated middle classes, the professionals, the cities, and those are not going to be the beneficiaries. So if you've sold a program to the people who one day pay for it, rather than the people who are going to benefit from it, you're not going to get enough votes.
But then
And I think
you're
that was
saying what I want to put to you, that if you announced a good scheme too late and failed to communicate it to the country, then what you're really talking about is Congress's inefficiency, and I might go further and say incompetence in actually getting value out of a good idea. You had a good idea, you got no value out of it, and it's brought you no benefit.
No, look, as far as the good idea is concerned, it stays a good idea, and I don't think we should stop telling people that this is something we'd like to
There's no point talking about it now because you aren't in a position to deliver it.
Yeah, we can in the states, in the state governments, do what we can.
Can I give you an idea of how poor your communication on Nyaya was? CSDS Lokniti did a survey after the results came out, and it shows that barely 59% of India knew of Nyaya. More importantly, if you target specifically the families earning less than 3,000, the percentage who were aware of Nyaya falls to 46%. That's a measure of the Congress's failure to communicate.
I know, and some of them didn't even understand that Nyaya was not about justice, but about economics, about getting
You're
the
making
money.
my point for me.
Yeah, no, I understand. So
Let's move
ideally,
beyond
we should
Nyaya.
have had 6 months more.
Let's move beyond Nyaya. We've talked about at least 3 aspects of the Congress campaign: Rafale, your inability to handle properly Balakot nationalism, and now your inability to communicate Nyaya. The fourth problem with your campaign was that you made Priyanka Gandhi General Secretary and you gave her a prominent role in the campaigning, not just in UP but all over the country. And this emphasized the Congress's dependence on dynasty and the Gandhi family at the precise time when there was a growing antipathy in India to entitlement. Once again, you were on the wrong side of the mood of the country.
Look, Karan, first of all, I should have said this at the very beginning. Remember, I'm not part of the campaign committee. I didn't run the campaign, number one. And number two, I'm not a member of the working committee either. I'm not an official spokesman of the party. So you're talking to me as one individual Congress MP
But
expressing
an
a view.
intelligent
I'm not
individual
speak-
Congress MP whose views the country is concerned about, and that's why I put to you, at a time when the mood of the country is growingly against entitlement, does it make sense to emphasize your party's dependence on the Gandhis by making the sister the General Secretary? And
Sister happens to be very popular.
but just look at it. You now have 3 Gandhis suddenly. The Congress Parliamentary Party
Well, the
leader
BJP
is
has two,
Sonia,
so we have to do
then there's
better
the
than that.
president who is Rahul, and then there's his sister General Secretary, and you suddenly look like a Gandhi fiefdom, precisely when the country doesn't want privilege, they don't want entitlement, they want aspiration, they want individual opportunity. Your message is wrong.
No, but you can't reduce the entire party to those 3 individuals. We have hundreds of leaders
But it
around the
has
country.
been. The country perceives your party in terms of those 3 individuals, and by appointing her to join them, you're making it worse.
It'd be very interesting if you folks in the media actually did a public opinion poll to see how much those people are liked and admired. The fact is, the Congress Party is a political party. It's not fools.
Do you
They
need to
understand
do a
that these
public
are
opinion
leaders who are
poll? No,
appreciated.
why do you need to do a public opinion poll when the brother lost his seat in Amethi? The Congress, with the 3 Gandhis, the top has come down to 52. The public has spoken. They don't like the Gandhis. More than that, they don't like dynasty. The Indian Express has pointed out that of the 38 dynast children standing in this election, an astonishing 22 lost. The only ones who succeeded were the Badals, the Vasundhara Raje Scindia clan, the Menaka Gandhis, and the Paswans, all of whom came under the BJP
And the Mahajan,
umbrella.
and the
But
Mahajan.
those who weren't under the BJP umbrella were dispensed with. And that message that India's moved beyond dynasties, moved beyond entitlement, it wants performance, it wants individual
Actually,
merit.
let me say that
you
that-
didn't understand as a party.
That number wasn't totally correct. Look, I have no dog in this fight. I'm not a dynast in any sense. Neither am I descended from a politician, nor are either of my children interested in entering politics. So let me speak purely as an individual.
You have no dog in this fight. Unfortunately, the Congress Party had a series of puppies in this
Let
fight.
me say, first of all, that I don't think your numbers tell the whole story. In fact, there is a more detailed survey by an international group which says that 30% of this parliament are quote-unquote dynasts, if you define a dynast as somebody who's in politics as an heir of an earlier politician. It could be a son, a daughter, a nephew, a niece, a grandson, whatever. 30% of the Lok Sabha. So dynasty has not disappeared.
Look at the number of
Karan-
Congress fathers and sons who've been defeated, right? It happened in Haryana, it's happened in Maharashtra, it's happened in Assam, it's happened in Amethi, it's happened in Bihar. There isn't a single Congress family where they were putting up to, which has succeeded. That's why dynasty worked against
And
him.
therefore, it doesn't really have much to do with dynasty. It has to do with the fact that the Congress party was, in fact,
No.
repudiated in
It
this
has
election.
to do with the fact that the image of the Congress party is heavily colored by the fact that you have the Gandhis on top, and by bringing Priyanka in at this precise time, you were defying the mood of the country, and it reacted against you. But let's
But
move beyond
again,
that.
the reality in my constituency and in my state is very different. The Gandhis are enormously popular. The fact that Priyanka chose to enter was greeted with delirium, and Rahul Gandhi's candidacy gave us the biggest majority we've ever had.
There's
in
no
any
doubt.
parliamentary
There's no
constituency.
doubt that Kerala is an outlier state in this
No, but there
election.
are
but
other parts of the
Well,
country
hang
with
on a
the
second.
Gandhis.
There is no part of the country, and I keep mentioning this, 18 states and union territories have given you, forgive me, zilch. But let's move beyond that. Rahul Gandhi has now accepted full responsibility for the debacle. He wants to resign. CWC won't let him. Why?
Because the CWC has calculated, I'm assuming, again, I'm not in the CWC,
Obviously.
it's a personal view, that he remains still the most credible, plausible, next generation leader to take the party forward in the 21st century.
Hang on a second. A man who has brought your party to 2 shattering consecutive defeats on each occasion, you have less than 1/10 of the seats in parliament, and you still believe he's the only person who can revive the party. That's a terrible indictment of every other congressman.
Every other congressman, but it's also true that any other congressman could stand against Rahul Gandhi in a free and fair election for Congress president and would lose, because the Congress workers, the CWC is representing very much the wishes of the Congress workers. They want a Gandhi Nehru to lead the party.
Do you know what you're saying? If it is truly the case that every single Congress worker would lose in a free fight against Rahul Gandhi, despite the fact Rahul has twice destroyed Congress, then that suggests that the level of sycophancy in your party has gone to such an extreme that the rest of the country would be appalled. That's another reason why people have distanced themselves from Congress. That
But
sycophancy is now the key culture of Congress.
That is not fair.
But that's what
it
you're
is
saying.
more a reflection of the extraordinary contribution of the Nehru-Gandhi family to the history of the country, to the building up of the country, and a recognition that anybody who embodies that lineage is bound to carry with him some of the trappings of that history. And that history is what's being supported. I agree it won't last forever. It can't last forever. But while it's there, it is a reality we have to
Shashi,
recognize.
look at the fast that was put on television on Saturday and Sunday. The day began with sources saying that Rahul Gandhi hadn't offered to resign. Then it was confirmed that he had offered to resign. Then we were told that the CWC absolutely insisted it will not accept his resignation. After that, a series of sources kept revealing right through Saturday and Sunday that Rahul insists on resigning. There were different reports about whether his mother or his sister support him or don't. But this tamasha, and I'm deliberately using that Hindi word, went on all weekend. And something that should have been simple and straightforward ended up becoming a spectacle, and it demeans and diminishes Congress in the eyes of the country. Once again, Congress became a laughing stock.
Oh, I think you're going too far, but it certainly hasn't.
All right, sniggering stock.
Oh, come on, Karan. I mean, the fact is that as far as the Congress party is concerned, you mustn't lose sight of the fact that it is the one national alternative, the one party with a genuinely nationwide footprint to stand up against the particular view of India the BJP has.
And that footprint is shrinking from size 10 shoes to baby size 3.
Oh, come on. We are going to revive, and we must revive. Don't forget, between these 2 electoral setbacks in the Lok Sabha, we have reclaimed 3 states.
Let's come back
and we came very close in Gujarat and became very close
So
in
you
Goa.
didn't come close in Gujarat at all
I'm
at the
not
Lok
referring
Sabha
to the
level.
Lok Sabha. I'm saying between the 2
But
Lok Sabha
this is-
elections,
this
we
is-
were able
but
to
this is-
demonstrate the effectiveness of our message in states.
But when
And
it
we have
came to
do
the
that now.
parliamentary election, Rajasthan, which you'd won, Madhya Pradesh, which you'd won, Chhattisgarh, that you won, you lost comprehensively.
So it
and
seems,
Gujarat,
absolutely.
where you thought you were reviving, you were demolished. So what counts is what happens on voting day, and on voting day, you weren't there. But let's come back to Rahul
the
Gandhi.
main
Let's come
difference
back.
there would probably be
Let's-
Modi, right?
Let's come back to Rahul Gandhi. You keep saying to me that your party believes that Rahul is the best man to lead the party back to some sort of power, to revive the party, despite the fact he's led it to 2 shattering defeats. And I'm going to put this to you. Why do you think he's got that ability? Where has he shown it? Just consider this. His performance in Parliament has been mediocre at best.
Oh, that's not.
Forgive me. Let me
Subboot Sarkar
complete.
is what stung Mr. Modi most effectively in his first term.
An accidental good phrase, I grant. But that's the
Wasn't an
only
accidental
one
knowledge.
in 15 years.
Oh, come on.
Now, go beyond that. He has not impressed the country. He does not have high levels of respect or admiration. His speaking capacity
Thanks,
is...
by the way, to a very effective caricaturing campaign by his political enemies, the BJP.
You tried to do the same to Mr. Modi and you failed. Modi succeeded with you, so don't blame him. And then he's a mediocre, if not poor, public speaker. His oratory is non-existent. And finally, he's not convincing in interviews. So where do you get this belief that Rahul has the capacity to lead you back?
Oh, I don't buy that he's not convincing in interviews. In the last 6 months, for example, there's been a flurry of interviews which have been reported with a great deal of positive because he's
Anything
come
will be
across very well.
reported in the middle of an election campaign, particularly when he's targeting Mr. Modi and being, forgive me, vituperative or critical of the Prime Minister. But does Rahul raise issues of interest that reflect the thinking and the mood of the country? No. Does Rahul actually bring on the agenda new thoughts that haven't existed there? No.
Oh, Rafale was a new thought that hadn't existed.
Rafale was not a new thought. It was actually a thought exposed by the Hindu and before that by Prashant
No.
Bhushan.
He raised it first. The Hindu's expose was later.
But Rahul
the Hindu built on Rahul
But
having raised it in
Rahul
Parliament.
had no proof whatsoever that the Prime Minister is a chore. He had no proof whatsoever about Anil Ambani. He went on making allegations without any substance, which is why they didn't work with the country. But leave that aside. Come back to this question of who will be your party president. Why is your party so averse to a non-Gandhi? After all, till the 1970s, you had many, many non-Gandhis as president.
The fact is that we had a somewhat different role for the party president historically, and I can go on comfortable territory here. We used to have a situation where the Congress president was a one-year term. It literally was the person who presided over the Congress, that is the actual conference every year, and it changed the next year. Very occasionally they get a 2-year stint and then they change again. So there was never a sense that the supremo in the party was ever the party president. He happened to be the person who presided over, like a non-executive chairman of a company during that time, whereas the prime minister...
During the
Can I
Indira
finish?
Gandhi years, that wasn't the case. Let's be honest, from the
No,
late...
she had presidents like D.K. Borua who were rubber stamps for her.
But beyond that,
she
but
herself
beyond that,
was prime minister and therefore the supreme.
do the same thing again. Shed one office, convince the country. After all, Amit Shah is a rubber stamp for Narendra Modi, no one denies that. But at least there isn't all power in one hand. If the country feels
That's
you
the
need
Narendra
a new
Modi's prime
president...
minister. We don't have the prime minister. So our only alternative is to have one position, that of the president.
So you've convinced yourself that Rahul Gandhi or any other Gandhi has to be both the parliamentary leader, which at the moment he's not mercifully, and the Congress president.
So last time, the equivalent of having this Modi-Shah division was a Kharge-Rahul division. Mallikarjun Kharge led the party in parliament. Rahul Gandhi led the party on the streets and in the
One
in
more
the country.
question. Given that it seems that your party is determined to keep Rahul Gandhi as party president, do you think you need a working president to help him? Clearly, he's not capable of leading the party back on his own, even if you insist he is. Therefore, give him a working president who can perhaps do the job.
No, I think he may need more than one
Working president.
in terms of supports. What title is for him to determine whether you call them vice president or working president or whatever else. To have people with zonal responsibilities is an idea that, for example, we tried out in Kerala last year, and it worked rather well. We actually went through a similar transition from an acting president of the KPCC to one in which a new president was supported by 3 working presidents, and it clearly has turned out to have good results. So my own view is that some possibility that the president might wish to consider, but the decision there is so way above my level of authority
Absolutely.
that my expressing
But
a view is
what you're saying today is that something that worked so successfully in Kerala, where you've done phenomenally well, is well worth trying nationally, and therefore if it would help Rahul Gandhi become more effective, have a series of regional working presidents who can be more effective in implementing Congress as a party.
Correct. I mean, there is the zonal route is one possible route. The other is if he wants to have, say, one basically in charge of communicating with those state governments where we are in power, and the other one doing the other governments, so that and the other states, so that we can try and build up.
So there are many permutations and
There are many
combinations.
possibilities. I mean, I'm certainly no authority on this, but I do believe, for example, that some of our good ideas we should take to our state governments and have them implemented. And there are many good ideas in the manifesto that we would have loved to have done nationally, but since we can't for the next 5 years, let's see what we can do in each state so that we actually have the authority.
You only have 3 or 4 states in your hand.
So that's a good place to start.
The other
See, we
issue-
can show that and then showcase that to the nation, saying, see how things have been done in this particular state. This is what we'll do for you if you give us a chance.
That's a very sensible idea. Let's hope your party accepts it. And more importantly, let's hope Rahul Gandhi accepts it. But another problem facing Congress immediately is that you need a new parliamentary leader in the Lok Sabha. Kharge has lost. Many believe, with your erudition, with your effectiveness as a debater, with the fact that you have a personality that people respond to, that job should be yours. Are you ready for it?
I believe I'm ready, but at the same time, I can't appoint myself. The party president, the party leadership will decide who amongst the 52 members does have what they need. I mean, they may be looking for certain qualities that I don't have, or they may be looking for the kinds of qualities I can offer. They know me well now. It's 10 years that I've been in this lower house speaking out in the Lok Sabha, and I hope that I can, in any case, put my talents at the service of the party in whatever capacity the president deems fit.
But you're saying something very important. You're saying you're ready for it. You have no hesitation in accepting it, but obviously it has to be given to you. You can't grab it.
Well, that's it, because we don't really have a system of electing the CLP. It's the party leadership that decides. That's been the
But are you
the way for
aware
quite
that
some
there are
time.
many senior congressmen who sotto voce behind closed doors are actually seriously talking about the fact that you should be given the job or considered for the job? Are you aware of that?
Well, I'm hearing rumors, Karan, but I'm glad to hear it, because I certainly, I'm not going to make any secret of the fact that I would relish such an opportunity if it were given to me. And if it isn't, then I will do what I can in whatever capacity remains.
Shashi, let's take a break at that point.
One second, before we take a break, Karan, if I can just chip in on this. The first point I should have stressed, you asked me a direct question, I gave you a direct answer. But there is a larger opportunity, which is that Rahul Gandhi himself could take on the leadership of the Congress Legislature Party and speak from the platform of the Lok Sabha directly against Narendra Modi and the BJP.
But then what
And
happens to the presidency? Does he give that up?
That's his call, whether he can do both or he only wants to
But
do
you
one.
surely
But
don't want him to have both jobs at the same time.
I think
He's been incompetent at one, he'll be incompetent at both.
the only point I'm stressing here is that if he is unable to find the time to do both and he wishes to relinquish the legislature party, only then would someone like me be in contention, or anyone else in the party. Otherwise, I think we would all be happy to assist Rahul Gandhi to be the voice of the party in the parliament.
Let me point out, and I'm going to take a break at that point, that after talking about a sensible solution, which is that you should be head of the legislature party, we've come down to what is possibly the worst solution, which is Rahul should have both jobs. As I
don't
said,
think you're being
he's
reasonable.
deemed to be incompetent at one. Now you're giving him the opportunity to be incompetent in both.
I'm assuming he will decide whether he wants to do two or one.
Oh, let me assure you, he will be the only one who will decide. Don't assume it. Such is the nature of the Congress party. All power is in his hands and his mother's and his sisters. The three of them will decide. Absolutely no one. That's time for a break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about Narendra Modi's phenomenal majority and how Shashi Tharoor, both as an MP and as Shashi Tharoor himself, responds to the issues of concern that spectacular mandate raises. See you in a moment's time. Welcome back. You're watching Up Front, and my guest is Shashi Tharoor, who many people believe should now be the Congress Party's parliamentary leader in the Lok Sabha. Shashi Tharoor, let's now talk about Narendra Modi and the spectacular mandate he's got. And I'm going to begin by repeating an issue we briefly discussed in part one. Will you accept that this is not so much a victory for the BJP? It's a personal endorsement of Narendra Modi, and people have voted for him with faith and with trust in the belief that even if he's made mistakes earlier, he will now deliver.
It seems to be the case. I certainly, look, first of all, have seen this as more a Modi victory than a BJP victory, though obviously with a very good BJP party organization, funding and muscle and RSS workers, all of that as part of the package, but certainly they sold Modi. And so
and sold him very well.
And therefore, for us as Democrats, we have a duty to respect the wishes of the electorate in deciding that this is the person they wish to see as Prime Minister, and we should respect him as part of our respect for the
Let's
office.
come to two concerns or consequences of the Modi victory. Firstly, he was fighting this election when at a time all the polls suggested that unemployment and rural distress were major concerns. And as you said yourself from part one, these were grounds why you thought Modi would lose. But it seems that in fact because he delivered on small things that mattered to people, that he won them over. I'm talking about houses, I'm talking about roads, electricity, toilets. As many people have said, these may be small things, but they mattered in people's lives, and as a result, people suffering from rural distress or unemployment were prepared to forget and forgive in the hope that if you give him a second chance, he'll correct that.
Well, it seems that that is a reasonable analysis, but it's at the same time an oversell. Because, for example, 65% of those toilets don't have running water and therefore are not being used.
But at least the structure is there.
So, but that's not enough, no, because you want a toilet
But
you
it's
can
an
use.
important
Otherwise, you don't
first
use
stage.
the toilet.
The
you still got
water
the
comes
food.
after the structure.
Similarly, the gas cylinders in the Ujjwala program, what's happening essentially is that after you get the first gas cylinder for free, you can't afford to buy the replacement, and for colossally
You
high
may not be
percentage
able to
have
afford
not
the
been able to.
replacement at the moment, but when you get a job and you get money, you will. At least the cylinders come.
But the fact is, somebody who voted for Mr. Modi 5 years ago, expecting to get a job as a result, still doesn't have that job
But
5
this
years later.
is the problem I'm putting
So
to
it's
you.
been a
that-
triumph of hope over actual performance.
But this is the problem I'm putting to you, that the real problems they faced of rural distress and joblessness simply diminished because they said to themselves as voters, we've got gas, we've got toilets, we've got houses, we've got roads. And as you say, those are small things, and in some cases they don't even work effectively. But nonetheless, in the eye of the voter, this mattered more than the distress and the unemployment they were suffering. And that is a real problem for you, because Mr. Modi will presumably deliver the same way, and bigger issues will simply diminish and disappear.
Well, look, I mean, we'll have to see. I want the good things for my country like anybody else, any other Indian. And if Mr. Modi can deliver them, more power to him. If he can't, then we feel we should be given a chance to do so.
But you have to convince the country you should be. And if you can't,
But
when
we have-
unemployment is at a 45-year-old high, then can you do it 5 years later?
So our point is, we also have a good track record. Don't forget, UPA 1 delivered all of these things, and that's why UPA 2 came into being. Mr. Modi ran a very effective campaign that did sidetrack the focus of the voter towards national security, towards his own persona, and away from the reality of these things. But I will admit that this is, if as a result of the BJP government's efforts, all this infrastructure is built and good things are delivered, every Indian must be happy. But let me say there are larger things
Hang
about
on
the
a
Modi
second.
government
That's what I'm
than
coming
gas
to.
connections and
And
electricity.
in fact, the
What
larger
is
thing
their
I want
idea of India?
it's absolutely, that's precisely the point I want to raise with you. Right through the whole of northern India and all of western India and large swathes of eastern India, Mr. Modi's concept of Hindutva, which sees India as an essentially Hindu country, has electorally triumphed over what I call Nehruvian secularism, which believes India is a multiplicity of ethnicities, regions, languages, cultures. And Mr. Modi boasted about this at his triumphant rally on Thursday evening when he said, "Is chunav mein secularists ka benaqab kar diya hai." Their mask has been stripped. That is another consequence that you have to face up to as a party. Suddenly, this country is not only embracing and acknowledging, but reveling in the idea it's a Hindu country. We don't care if we don't accept your definition of secularism. We're going to redefine the term.
See, actually, our definition of secularism is not some pointy-headed intellectual theory. It is an actual description of the reality of India. We are a multilingual country. We are a multi-religious country. We are a multi-caste country.
80% of the country does not seem to accept that. When they embrace Hindutva and vote for Hindutva, they are identifying as essentially Hindu. They are
Now you're contradicting
eroding.
yourself. You've
I'm
just
not.
been telling me that they basically voted for Mr. Modi, the larger-than-life strong man with a 56-inch chest. They voted against
There were
Pulwama
many
and
reasons they
Pakistan.
voted for him.
Exactly.
That's what
So,
I'm pointing out to you. They
my
voted
point
on
is-
nationalism.
my
They
point
voted
is
on
the Indian
delivery.
people
They
would
voted
not-
on Hinduism.
The Indian people would not, I believe, vote for murdering Muhammad Akhlaq because he had meat in his hand that might have been beef
The
and
Indian
wasn't.
people
They would
didn't
not support.
punish Mr. Modi for looking and seeming as if he allied with the murderers. For that is the point. You pointed out that in fact Mr. Modi is silent when hateful things are said about Muslims.
said this
The
repeatedly.
country didn't seem to object. The point is your message. And by the way, here's another point.
So I'm saying it's not necessarily a vote for those extremists. It is a vote for a redefinition, alas, of what India is all about. He is indeed
But it's
projecting
a
India as a Hindu
redefinition in
Rashtra.
terms of extremism.
No, that we are going to resist. Look,
Are you?
they got
Hang on a second,
37.1%.
are you-
There's 63 that didn't buy their agenda.
Do you know what the country says? That steadily since 2014, you have been diminishing and diluting your own commitment to Nehruvian secularism. Ever since A.K. Antony presented his report to Sonia Gandhi on the 2014 verdict, you are loath to take up issues that look like pro-Muslim because you don't want to be seen as pro-Muslim because you're scared you lose Hindu votes. On that, the whole country seems to be agreed.
That may be true across northern India. It's certainly not true in Kerala. I can tell you from my own campaign and the campaigns
But
of others
northern
around
India
me.
is where you've lost. Northern India is where
we have-
Hindutva has trumped you.
Yeah. But I'm saying we didn't win elsewhere by trying to get
But
away
Shashi,
from...
you were telling me a moment ago that you're going to challenge Hindutva and you're going to fight back by stressing secularism. In northern India, as you said, you didn't, and you collapsed.
Listen, we have a lot we can point out to our North Indian brethren about the reality of life. The Ram Leela will not happen in Benares without Muslim artisans making the masks. It's as simple as that. You will not conduct an Amarnath pilgrimage without a Muslim family looking after that shrine for the last 400 years. You've got to understand that our lives are intertwined.
Why wasn't Rahul Gandhi giving that message? Why instead did he present himself as a Janeudhari Brahmin?
I think this Janeudhari
When in
was
fact
never
part of
said
his
by him.
ancestry, let's be honest, is Parsi, not even Hindu. Why suddenly confuse the country when you have a clarity of vision, which I've heard from Shashi Tharoor so forcefully? Why did Congress not say that?
Look, as I said, I'm not on the campaign committee and I didn't campaign across northern India. But let me stress that we have a message that will resonate with our friends in northern
If
India.
someone is prepared as party president to say it. At the moment, Rahul doesn't say it.
No, I think we should say it. I think we should say it. And what is more, I do believe that if there is going to be a debate within the party about whether we should completely go off and be BJP light and simply emphasize our own Hindu roots, then I would say, well, if you end up with, if you go for looking for Coke Light, you end up with Coke Zero, the same thing will happen to us. As far as the BJP is concerned, BJP Light will not work. We have to say we do offer a different vision of India, which is anchored in the reality of India, which is that people of different religions must cohabit and cooperate, and that what is more, most Hindus see India that way. Most Hindus have no difficulty, have no desire to bash somebody else on the head because they are Muslim or anything else. The fact is, however, that we have now created a new normal in which, as you rightly said, those who do that are condoned by those in power, while those in power are seeking votes on other
Shashi,
things.
I was so happy to hear you say this because for once I heard a congressman enunciating a position that is not just the opposite of Hindutva, but can challenge Hindutva. Whereas up till now, Rahul Gandhi has been trying to, as you said, become Hindutva light.
No, he hasn't been trying that. He's been misunderstood. What he's been saying
He's been
is that
misunderstood because he deliberately presented himself as a Janeudhar Brahmin when in fact he's partly of Parsi origin. He doesn't even talk about that. And in a country which is a multiple identity, multiple cultural country, he should have been proud of the fact that he's a quarter Parsi. But he's not. He doesn't even talk about it. And this is the point I'm making. What you're saying now is so different to what Rahul did and said.
Look, I think that the fact is that Rahul Gandhi needed to neutralize the BJP claim that they were the exclusive voice of Hindu Indians. You want to say we have Hindus amongst us as well, who are just as Hindu as the BJP guys, but we don't interpret Hinduism as Hindutva. Hindutva is a dangerous political doctrine that can divide the country. Hinduism is a capacious faith that can unite the country and that respects difference. To my mind, as a Hindu, I believe in my faith and I respect others who believe their faiths. And they, in turn, I demand of them that they respect my faith. That is what Swami Vivekananda taught us, and that's my Hinduism, and that's Rahul Gandhi's Hinduism.
Let's move beyond Rahul Gandhi Hinduism to one more point that I want to make to you, and I'm making it deliberately to you rather than to anyone else, and I'm going to make it deliberately in personal terms. A lot of people say, when they reflect upon the mandate that's come, that this is a verdict against people like you and me and our class of Indians specifically. For generations, people like us have assumed and taken it for granted that because of our birth, our lineage, our education, our erudition, the fact that we have contacts, we are born to be people of influence who matter even to run the country. And there was enormous resentment about this in India. Mr. Modi was perhaps one of the first to recognize it. He tapped into it, and he's got a huge mandate. And this is a mandate against the assumptions that people like you and me in our class have that we have a right to rule.
Listen, the Congress party is the party that actually opened up the political space to people of all backgrounds, including socio-economic levels that you are now associating only with the BJP. Dr. Manmohan Singh was born in poverty in a village in Punjab. He rose through education. That's the story of my own father.
But
I have a privileged education because my father walked 8 kilometers
Shashi,
to high school and came in.
Because of the
I don't
dynasts
accept
that
this.
dominate the Congress party, and the Gandhis in particular, the image of Congress is that, like you and me, they are perceived to be people who assume they have a natural right to influence and power and to rule. That image is what's destroyed you, and it's that image that the country voted against. It's that image that Modi tapped into.
So we'll have to
that gave
dispel
him
that
this
image
mandate.
because it simply is not the whole story about the Congress party. I mean, as I said in a thing that became one of my controversies, the fact that Narendra Modi rose from humble origins to become a Prime Minister of India is actually a tribute to the system that Nehru made possible of creating a democracy that opens up space. For people like Mr. Narendra, we should applaud Narendra Modi, but we should also pay tribute to those who made it possible to have a Narendra Modi.
Let me run the risk of putting words in Narendra Modi's mouth, but I don't believe I'm doing so inaccurately. He would probably say that one reason why the Shashi Tharoors and Karan Thapars are so unhappy with this outcome is because the sun has set on their future. A new India, as he identified it on Thursday, has arisen, and he's at the head of it. You and I, and a whole other generation of people like us, are actually on the wrong side of history.
Well, I think we're going to be nonetheless offering a consistent alternative, which comes out of our own experience of India, which comes out of our own understanding of the realities we live in. After all, we too have to fight and win elections, not only Mr. Modi. If I and my worldview were that out of sync with what the people of Thiruvananthapuram believe, I wouldn't be sitting here today right now.
I don't want to flatter you, but that can only be done with someone with your thinking and your articulation. I don't want to embarrass you. I don't believe Rahul Gandhi has the capacity to do it. You do. This is one reason why you can't become Congress president, that I accept. But this is one reason why someone like you should be the parliamentary party leader. So that voice, so that reasoning, so that counter to Mr. Modi is clearly heard every single evening.
Well, you're telling the wrong person that, but certainly I do intend to play whatever role the party allows me to play because I have earned it through my re-election. I'm going to be there as a voice for what I believe and what the party stands for.
We've only got 5 minutes left. Just come back to the big picture. Mr. Modi has 303 MPs. With his allies, he has 353. If you look at the states, either the BJP or in alliance with their allies, they're ruling 17 states. Would you accept? Today, the BJP is the political hegemon of this country.
Indeed, and that worries me because many of the BJP MPs have made no secret of their desire to completely change the constitution. There are people talking about enshrining India as a Hindu Rashtra, which I think would do us great damage, both to our own people domestically and to our standing in the world. I really think that this government needed the check and balance, either of not being a majority in the lower house or of losing other places. Right now, they have everything they need to amend the constitution. They're both houses and more than half the states.
You say they needed checks and balances. In fact, the only check that exists in the Rajya Sabha is going to disappear either in 21 or 22, and then the remaining political constraint on their power will have gone. They will be even more powerful by 2022 than they are today.
That is very, very worrying, it seems to me. And that's why if we can't hold them in check with numbers, we have to hold them in check with ideas. We have to raise the voices of those who really are feeling afraid today. There are people, our fellow Indian citizens, who are saying that they are fearful of their lives and place in this country and this society.
Let's be honest, we're talking primarily about Muslims, aren't we?
Not just.
Primarily.
Yes, primarily. But frankly, I have a lot of Christians in my constituency and elsewhere who are also worried. The fact is that there are people, and of course there are lots of Hindus who don't share the BJP agenda who have every reason to be worried. So
but you know,
worry and alarm should be. I was very interested to hear Mr. Modi saying that he will bring his opponents along with him. He said something similar in 2014 but didn't take steps to reach out to the other side. Now, with the impregnable security of re-election, will he reach out?
He spoke about Vishwas, Sabka Vishwas, but it's slender hope when you remember that 48 hours earlier he said, "Is chunav ne secularists ka benekab kar diya." Remember, he said both within 48 hours of each other. But I'm going to end with just one question. Many people say that unless Mr. Modi does something horribly wrong, which is very, very unlikely, you don't have much chance of defeating him even in 2024. The truth is, you've reached such a low point, it's going to take Congress 2 or 3 elections to get back to power.
Look, I mean, obviously, things don't look good right now in the immediate aftermath of a crushing defeat. But as I said, we are a national party, we have a national footprint. We have good ideas and values which emerge from the freedom struggle, which are the values imparted to us by Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Ambedkar, Maulana Azad, giants of our national history. And we can, it seems to me, put those ideas forward across the nation. And we must do it, and we must seize every opportunity to do it. State elections are coming up, local elections are coming up. We have for so long been the natural party of governance that we shouldn't lose that instinct. We must say that what we can offer is experience, a proven track record of success, recent record of failure that we can overcome. That's got to be the spirit in which we re-enter the race. And I'm determined that the Congress Party, as long as people around share my view that we must and can do this, the Congress Party will do it.
I hear what you say, and I'm going to only end with this, that I hope your erudition and the power of your thinking doesn't end up putting you on the wrong side of the Gandhis. Shashi Tharoor, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Karan.